Hello again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Podcast with Deborah Prenzing, episode 495. This is the weekly podcast about slow flowers and the people who grow and design with them. It's all about making a conscious choice, and I invite you to join the conversation and the creative community as we discuss the vital topics of saving our domestic flower farms and supporting a floral industry that relies on a safe, seasonal, and local supply of flowers and foliage. This podcast is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free online directory to more than 850 florists, shops, and studios who design with local, seasonal, and sustainable flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. And thank you to our lead sponsor for 2021, Farm Girl Flowers. Farm Girl Flowers delivers iconic burlap wrap bouquets and lush, abundant arrangements to customers across the U.S., supporting more than 20 U.S. flower farms by purchasing more than $9 million of U.S.-grown fresh and seasonal flowers and foliage annually, and providing competitive salaries and benefits to 240 team members based in Watsonville and Miami. Discover more at farmgirlflowers.com. For each podcast episode this year, we'll also thank 3 of our major sponsors. Our first sponsor thank you goes to Syndicate Sales, an American manufacturer of vases and accessories for the professional florist. Look for the American flag icon to find Syndicate's USA-made products and join the Syndicate Stars loyalty program at syndicatesales.com. Last month, I was treated to a lovely workcation opportunity to join 2 friends at a home they had rented where they worked remotely through the COVID pandemic. They promised me my own bedroom and bathroom, a dining table with a view of sea, mountains, and islands, a friendly golden retriever named Rocky who seemed in constant need of human beach walking companionship, and lots of good conversation with adults. Oh, and a dip in the hot tub each night. How could I refuse? I got my negative test and took a ferry to Lopez Island for 4 days. And yes, it was a workcation, but I enjoyed lots of R&R at the same time. I also made a point of visiting today's guest, Lindsay Cummins of Dancing Flower Farm, the only Slow Flowers member on Lopez Island. It's a tiny island in the San Juan Islands. I couldn't pass up the chance to visit her homestead and learn more about how she and her young family are putting down roots while also growing beautiful, sustainable flowers. It was especially gratifying to do something I used to do all the time pre-COVID, conducting an in-person interview of a flower farmer or a floral designer whenever and wherever I traveled. I will never again take that privilege for granted. My fresh air conversation with Lindsay, which you'll hear today, was only the 3rd in-person episode I've recorded in the past 12 months. Wow, we are living in a world of Zoom and FaceTime, and while I'm grateful for the technology, I have to say that sitting on a picnic bench, sipping tea, chatting with Lindsay, and appreciating her first early spring arrangement on the table, well, that was a treat. Even when the skies opened and we were pummeled with an unexpected hailstorm, hey, it was all part of the experience, which you'll hear midway through our conversation. Before we start, let me share a bit more about Lindsay Cummins. This is excerpted from her website. Lindsay is the owner, grower, and florist of Dancing Flower Farm, a micro-specialty cut flower farm on Lopez Island in the Pacific Northwest. She writes this: I am deeply inspired by nature's seasons. I grew up being outside all of the time, helping my mom in her vegetable garden, playing in her herb garden, and being encouraged to explore. Those early years definitely made an impact on how I live my life now and how my floral designs continue to develop. I recently came across notes my mom had helped me write, outlining my first business adventure at 8 years old, growing flowers to sell to our neighbors in my little red wagon. I grew cosmos, sweet peas, and zinnias that year. It only took me 20 years to realize that that was my calling in life, though cooking, baking, and landscaping helped me get where I am today, and are skills I value greatly. I start each design as a tiny seed, corm, bulb, or tuber, caring and tending them using naturally organic practices till they produce beautiful blooms. I am passionate about designing with only seasonal flowers and foliage that I grow or forage. Growing flowers gives me a sense of purpose, adding beauty to the world and seeing how they bring joy to people makes me happy. I feel every step of the growing process helps me design naturally abundant arrangements, letting the flowers elegantly move to form romantic pieces from bouquets to installations. No occasion is too small for local flowers. As well as offering fresh flowers, I grow everlasting flowers that dry beautifully for creating special, lasting pieces. Flower crowns, hair combs, wreaths, and bridal flowers, keeping color all season long naturally. If you have an event that is happening during the winter when fresh flowers are not available, I encourage you to ask about local dried flower options. Well, I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Visit DeborahPrinzing.com to see photos of Lindsay, her farm, her flowers, and to find links to her social places. Let's jump right in and get started.
And now I'm definitely more of a cutting garden than a farm. I don't really consider myself a farm because there are real farms here.
Well, we'll discuss that. Okay. Let's start. Welcome back to the Slow Flowers podcast with Deborah Prinzing. And got a very special guest and a very special conversation for you today. I'm coming to you from Lopez Island in Washington State in the San Juans. And I'd love to introduce you to Lindsay Cummins of Dancing Flower Farm. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Deborah. So thank you so much for coming here.
Oh my gosh, it's such a treat to see a real outdoor growing area and not be on Zoom.
I know, this is very special to have an in-person interaction.
Yeah. Well, I did sneak away for a staycation, workcation with, I guess maybe that's a better way of putting it, with some friends who rented a house here on Lopez, and they invited me to come for a few days. And I thought, okay, who can I see while I'm there? And of course, you're the only Slow Flowers member on Lopez Island, so I knew I was going to track you down. And I'm so glad that we could connect.
Me too.
Yeah. Give us a snapshot of what is Dancing Flower Farm, and how would you describe it to somebody down in town when they ask you what you do?
Well, I'm a farmer florist, so I grow all my own flowers, and then I design with them, and I make bouquets or arrangements depending on what it is. I start pretty much everything from seed and do a lot of propagation, which I'm having a lot of fun with.
Oh, neat, yeah.
Because I just got, this is my first greenhouse, and I have a heat mat in there, and so I'm having a lot of fun experimenting.
Oh yeah, you'll have to describe that greenhouse. It looks like it's about...
I think it's about 40 feet long.
Oh, wow.
And maybe 12 feet wide.
Yeah.
It's an old Costco tent frame. It's two frames put together, and then we bought greenhouse plastic and put it over.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll take a picture of it to share. And obviously, I'm not good at guesstimating distances, but how fun. So this is your first year growing in a greenhouse.
Yes.
So Dancing Flower Farm is, as you said, design focused. You're on an island that has a limited population. Can you just talk a little bit about how who you're selling to, and like who your clients are, and sort of that attitude that people have about local flowers?
It's been interesting. It's been a very slow journey. I started in 2015, in the winter of 2015, planning. So I guess it was 2016 when I really started growing. Mm-hmm. I had been doing a lot of landscaping, so I've been around plants a lot. And I was working at Barn Owl Bakery, which is a sourdough wood-fired local bakery on the island.
Oh, neat.
And so I would work there 6 days a week, and then on any of the time I wasn't there, I would be in the garden working. And I ran their farmer's market booth that summer, and they let me have bouquets. So it was the first little introduction of letting people know what I was doing.
Yeah, that's so neat. That farmer's market in the main, there's no town on Lopez. It's just Lopez, right?
It's Lopez Village.
Yeah.
It's just the one little town.
I love that farmer's market. It's such a, I don't know, such a sense of community even when you're a visitor. So how fun.
Yeah,
That's great.
It was a good introduction. Yeah. And then I did the farmer's market as my own booth for a couple years. It was not a very profitable experience, but it was a good advertising experience of just getting people to recognize me with flowers. And so it definitely has given me a client base.
That's awesome.
And then also my first year, I started making arrangements for local businesses. So a couple restaurants doing their bud vases and big welcome bouquets, and a couple other places.
Because there's so much tourism here.
Yeah.
That there are inns and B&Bs and that sort of thing too, right?
Yes.
That's so interesting that, the way you started with the farmer's market seems to be a kind of a point of entry for incubating a local flower business. I hear that from a lot of people, but sounds like you branched out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it just ended up not being, really worth my time for how much prep is involved the day before and then the whole day that you are there. And so I would end up feeling very antsy of spending my whole Saturday there when I could be really being productive in the garden.
You're like,
which is where I want to be.
And it's all on spec. Like, you don't have pre-orders at the farmer's market, right?
Yeah. So I would have good days where I would sell out, and then I would have a day where I would sell 3 bouquets. And I was like, well, that is just not really worth the 2 days that I, put into this.
No. So having the businesses, that was more like a subscription-based, regular, recurring kind of thing.
I did their flowers every week.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was like really good way to get better and practice designing and doing arrangements and getting comfortable doing that, because doing arrangements versus a farmer's market bouquet is just very different style. And
yeah, also, because you're looking at the environment where, when you said the welcome bouquet, like, what is the scale? And
yeah.
But I'm hoping that those clients also kind of let you do grower's choice. Like, they weren't trying to micromanage what you designed.
No, I just showed up every week with a new arrangement. One of my favorite place was Ursa Minor, which is a little local food restaurant that does very much like 100-mile kind of food. Like everything is sourced very locally.
Yeah. So you were in alignment with that completely.
And they had moved here the same year that I started. So it was really fun getting to be a part of their beginning. And they had a beautiful blown glass vase that I got to work with for their bar. And it was just a really fun opportunity to get to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you, and some of these things, it wasn't like you had a little placard that said Dancing Flower Farm, but people started asking who created these flowers.
They let me put a little stack of business cards next to their business cards.
Neat.
So
that's really neat.
That was nice.
So that was like 2017, 18 in that range?
Uh-huh. And then, 2016, 2017, 2018. And then last year, 2019. Oh my gosh.
Well, because we don't even know what 2020 was, so I know what you're doing.
I'm trying to remember. In 2019, I had my son Ira, and so I stuck with Ursa Minor and did their arrangements, and I really scaled back and didn't do a lot because we had just moved to our new property, and it was a very big transition year of having a newborn.
Yeah.
And but I just kind of kept my business semi-alive and going.
Yeah.
And
it's the stuff women do.
And then in the winter of 2019, going into 2020, I really needed to figure out a way to make my business work and grow and be more smooth and efficient. And I knew that I didn't want to do the farmer's market. And so I had been looking into doing CSAs for a while, and I got it all up and running, got on my website, sent out an email, put posters around town, all in February before the pandemic hit. So I didn't know what was about to happen.
Oh my goodness.
And it was such good timing and such a good move. And
so really 2020 was your first CSA subscription year?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was my first year growing on our new property. And our new property is pretty much bedrock. And so I've been building all of the raised beds. So it was a very small garden, but I was able to sell every single flower I grew last year.
Wow.
It all went into the CSA.
That's so great.
And then I had some, special order arrangements that when people reach out.
So we'll talk about your new property in a second. I just am curious, how did you market the subscription? Like, what was the length of time and, the options that you gave people?
Last year I did, I think 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and 12 weeks
as
options.
Uh-huh.
This year, I just sent out the email today, letting everyone know that it was time to sign up again. And this year, I am doing 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and 24 weeks.
Wow.
So giving people a few different options.
Right. And because you're here on the island, are you delivering them all, or do you have a central pickup place?
Last year, I delivered them all.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's how a lot of people have to get started, right?
And it was fine. I was too much of a stress to try to figure out a good location for them to pick it up during lockdown. It was just like I couldn't figure out exactly how to do it, because all the businesses I had originally was going to reach out to, all of a sudden they weren't open anymore. And also with a baby, I couldn't guarantee that I would be somewhere at a very specific time, and I didn't want to be flaky.
Yeah.
And so,
so you put Ira in the car seat and then the flowers in the back and just took off.
And it was like an hour-long drive around the island delivering, and it turned into a very peaceful time to just drive and listen to some music and be, just kind of have a little bit of a space out time.
And spread cheer to people, right?
Yeah. And I would drop off their flowers in buckets, and then I would pick up the buckets from the last week and
so they were
switched
loose.
it out. Well, no, I had them in market-style bouquets, wrapped in craft paper.
Uh-huh.
And then I have a huge stack of old ice cream buckets that I got at our Take It or Leave It, which is our dump facility.
Oh, my gosh.
And so they're big white food-grade buckets.
Right.
And so I would just put the bouquets in there and leave them on doorsteps.
Oh, just so that they're not flopping over.
And they're in water.
Yeah.
Because that's something I feel really important.
Yeah.
Is keeping them hydrated and fresh so they last a full week.
I see. So someone would, if they were home, they would wait till you left, open their door, get it, and then go home and it's already arranged.
I would arrange it in kind of a spiral bouquet technique. I got pretty fast at doing that. And so I definitely missed doing arrangements last year since the restaurants weren't open.
Right. So you kind of alluded to the fact that you couldn't have predicted in February when you launched this how important it was going to be. I mean, I'm just anecdotally, how did people respond? Were they just...
They got so excited.
Yeah.
It was such good feedback.
Yeah, I bet.
Which felt really good.
I mean, I feel like we heard that universally, that there was this pent-up desire for nature, and flowers were sometimes the only real, achievable way people could connect.
Yeah, I feel like that's something I've heard a lot over the last year through your podcast and on Instagram, just continuously people being yay, flowers.
Yeah, and for you financially to have the subscribers also, probably since you're just getting this new garden built, you could have some early revenue then to invest in plants and seeds and cuttings and that sort of thing.
And just knowing that they were sold, just not having that open variable of not knowing if something was going to sell, it felt really good to just know. Oh,
it's amazing that you timed, because it's hard to forecast, right? So for you to say that you sold every stem, okay, you probably had to get creative a few times where you did a little foraging or whatever, right?
I'm a big forager.
Okay.
I have a very... our backyard just kind of goes into the woods.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of foraging of honeysuckle, because honeysuckle around here just grows like crazy.
Wow.
I would kind of assume it's maybe on the semi-invasive list.
Right.
But I love it.
Yeah.
And so I, feel like I can't forage it too much.
Yeah. You're doing nature a favor by foraging it more. Yeah. And are there sword ferns and salal, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there are sword ferns and salal. I use them when I'm kind of desperate and I really need something. They're not my favorite thing to forage.
They're probably a little bit like universally available on the island, so you're trying to get a little bit more.
I just like to have things
uncommon.
that are a little bit more unique and uncommon, and have people email me and be like, "Oh my gosh, what was that thing that was in here?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Ceranth."
Yeah, and so when you do that, are you also posting on Instagram like some examples of the bouquets so that you can just start building that following?
I really tried.
Yeah.
There was definitely some weeks where getting them done and in the car and going, and then I would deliver them, and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't take out my phone and take a picture."
Oh gosh,
once.
I know. We all do that. That's cool.
But I definitely got in the groove of taking a picture of them and putting it at least in my stories and trying to do that every time just to, and so I can go back and look too.
That's true. You can
see what was happening on which week, because I try to write everything down, but there's definitely weeks where I go and look in my planner and it's completely empty, and then I pull out my phone and I look through all the pictures. I'm like, what did I do that week?
I love it. So you mentioned that you just posted or sent out the newsletter, and is it on your website too, the new offerings?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I just last night got it live ready to go, and sent out an email to all of my CSA members from last year, giving them first dibs.
So roughly how many subscribers over the course, at any short or long versions of the subscriptions did you have?
I think I had 24 signups last year.
That's great for a first year.
Which I was really thrilled with.
Yeah.
Totally great. This is maybe a little ambitious. I would like to double that this year. And
I think you can.
I'm going to have more growing space this year.
Right.
So
right. And just as an aside, what happened to the farmers market on Lopez last year?
Did it kept going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never actually went to it.
Yeah.
But
are there other people bringing like cuttings from their garden, or are they more nursery plant people?
Well, there's definitely farmers that do vegetables at the farmers market, and then there's Barnell Bakery that has their booth there. And then there's some other food vendors, and then there's a lot of arts and crafts.
So flowers might show up occasionally, but it's not really.
Yeah, there's definitely, sometimes some of the farmers, vegetable farmers would bring flowers.
They might have zinnias or something like that.
Yeah. And one of the years that I did it, another flower farmer had a booth at the other end.
It's nice to have more than one so that it kind of, builds up an awareness. And so you're top of mind for the shoppers who, they probably have a lot of choice in certain other crops, like, food crops. So.
And there's lots of farm stands on the island. So there's definitely vegetable farmers who grow flowers and have them at their farm stands.
Okay.
And so people go up and...
Oh, I hope you double. That is really exciting. And I feel like you're differentiating yourself because you're adding a level of design.
I'm trying really... When I started, my goal was there was another well-established flower farmer on the island. And so my goal was to choose completely different color palette and style from the get-go.
Oh, that's
good. Really try to be unique and pick unusual things.
And so when you said that you have a background in landscaping, that must influence your broader palette of things that you are designing with. And talk a little bit about how that led you to, the bakery sounds like it was just a really fun way to live on Lopez.
I love baking, so It was just when they offered me the job, I said yes.
Plus, you start really early at a bakery, right?
Yeah, I would have shifts where I would start at 6, and then I would have, it just kind of depended. I was one of their first employees, so I did a lot of different things. And so some days I would go in there early and get out relatively early in the day, so I would have the evening in the garden.
Right.
Or, I would start later in the day at the bakery and have like the, early hours in the morning in the garden. I would just kind of juggle it.
Yeah. So I got off track. Your journey to plants and then how that led to flowers I'm really curious about. I think that's the one thing people always want to hear.
Well, there are a lot of large estates on the island, and so I started landscaping at one of the big estates, and learned a lot from the woman who ran it, and just about all the different, there were so many different plants, I guess, that I had never really had in like my mother's garden growing up. You know, lots of ornamentals, and there was a huge bearded iris walk that was so beautiful.
Oh my goodness. And that's having its comeback time, isn't it?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And so there was lots of, I've learned a lot about different plants and how they need their care. And especially in a state like that where everything is very manicured and pristine. And
did you guys often harvest and make arrangements for the household, or was that not a big issue or something that the owner desired?
At the time, the owners weren't around a lot, and so we got to pick a lot of stuff, and so I started bringing friends flowers, and then
that was your lab then.
It was so much fun. You know, it wasn't a huge amount, but it was definitely like they had these really well-established big white peonies that just were, you know, they got overloaded, and then it would start to rain, and you have start to collapse. You have to cut them. They're making a mess.
I love it.
And
I think peonies just get better with age, so it sounds like they were really mature. And
then a great thing is now the people who own that are actually one of my CSA members. So it was like a fun
full circle.
But I learned a lot working there, and then I had other jobs at other places that I worked as well.
So you really became fluent in plants, basically.
And I got my own landscaping job at running a place, and that did not last very long. And I realized that is just not my calling to do the meticulous weeding and all of the little things that you have to do.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And you're obviously putting it to use in your own property.
Yes. I am, now that we have our own place, I'm getting to implement all these things that I realize I've soaked up most of my life. One of my grandmothers was a painter, and she was, I guess she was probably more well known for a lot of her abstracts, but my favorite were all of her paintings of flowers. And she was a big member of the garden club in Carmel, California.
Oh, wow.
And so she did a lot of their, painted all their flyers and stuff for that. And I,
for like their tours and their events.
Yeah, just all of the, you know, like she painted canvas hats with flowers on it. I have like a couple of those stored away. And
that's wonderful.
So I actually came across, when I was going through a box of her stuff recently, I pulled out and was looking through, and I felt like looking back, and because I just so wish that I could share what I've found. She would be really into what I'm doing now.
I bet.
So it's too bad I'm not able to share.
But somehow it's in the genetic thread is there, you know, you've carried it forward.
And so I found a few articles and she was featured in a lot of magazines for her landscaping around her house, which is something I did not realize as a teenager. And so it was really fun to go through and read about her color theories of how she landscaped it. And I think she probably had professional landscapers go and do it.
Yeah, but because she was an artist, there was definitely some influence of
she was talking about different, like the blues and how they make you feel and just different things like that. And so,
where did you grow up?
My parents moved here when I was 10, and so
to
Lopez.
Wow!
And so
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
you think of it as a place where people go to retire, not to raise children, but you're continuing on with your own child now.
Yeah, which is something that as a teenager, if you'd told me that, I would have laughed at you and been like, no way, I'm going to live in a big city.
Yeah, we drove by the school yesterday. We were wondering, is it like K through 12?
Yeah, it's K through 12.
It's one school.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's a tiny little school.
That's wonderful. So you moved here from where?
Marble Mount, Washington, which is up Highway 20 before you go to Eastern Washington. So way up there.
Yeah. But also pretty rural.
Yes, very.
But this is a little bit milder climate to be in the San Juans, right?
Yeah, and this actually feels less rural because there wasn't really a very big community at the time living up there. So, we only had a few friends that were close by. and we'd have to drive down to Mount Vernon for ballet class and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
coming here, everything was very close.
That's true. It's a tight-knit community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you knew kind of where the opportunities were to have a farm or whatever, but you said you ended up looking for a long time because it's gotten to be kind of a very popular second home island, and I'm sure real estate is expensive.
Oh yeah, like it is pretty much everywhere right now.
Yeah.
And my partner Zach was fishing in the summers up in Bristol Bay, and so we were just saving and trying to find a place that we could make our home.
Yeah. How much acreage do you have?
We have 5 acres.
Okay. And what would you call this part of the island? Is this because I know we went down Mud Bay Road, but then I lost all orientation.
So we are kind of on Lopez Hill.
Okay.
We are in the center of the island. Our driveway is very long, so you loop all the way around. And now now we're like all the way back. And so if you walk through the woods, there are Lopez Hill trails all the way up there.
And do you guys just hike around and
when
you're foraging?
A little bit. I probably don't go on them as much as I could.
Yeah, with a 2-year-old, probably not.
He's definitely at the age where I think he would walk around. I'm sure we'll do that more this summer.
Yeah. But I'm impressed because we're sitting in this kind of like open space that is surrounded by tall conifers. And if you had moved here and it was all treed, it would have been just another barrier to starting to grow right away.
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I mean, I don't think we probably would have bought this if it had been completely wooded. We looked at a lot of places that were wooded, and we're like, okay, this is where the garden's going to be.
Yeah.
And but it would have taken a long time to rip the trees out and then get the soil okay. And
so this was cleared prior to your moving here.
Yeah, this was cleared over 20 years ago.
Wow.
And so it had time to, it's hailing.
Maybe we'll see a rainbow because the sun is still out over there. It's the Northwest.
I know. This is spring.
We've been chatting for a while, but I'm fine if we get a little wet.
Okay. Just let me know when you run under the porch.
This is an environmental interview, people.
Well, environment is something that I am really passionate about, being careful with our environment. And so that is something that is a little unique, is all of my pots and everything I have collected from our dump, our take it or leave it, where there's a big recycling bin where people put their old gardening black pots. And I have been collecting them for a few years.
So like the 5-gallon or the 3-gallon, the things that or are they the larger pots?
Oh, well, those are actually grow bags that have roses in them. They're 25-gallon grow bags that I am experimenting with and seeing how the roses do. Yeah. Last year was their first year in them, and they did great. And they got a prune.
They're happy. Yeah, they're happy in that kind of container environment normally.
Yeah, so I figured that, getting the big grow bags, then eventually when I figure out where I want them to be in their forever home, we can just kind of move the bags and maybe like slit them and then just build the soil around them. And then the roses will just be there.
Because you're going to have to build up wherever you plant them eventually because of this rock that you're on.
Yes.
Wow.
And so
that's cool. So you're being very just finding like most farmers, finding what's available and putting it to use rather than.
Yeah, I'm just really trying to reuse a lot.
Should we go into the?
This is ridiculous.
I'm gonna put this on pause for a second. Hey, we're resuming the interview here, folks. Lindsay and I had a beautiful outdoor setting for our COVID safe interview, and then a hailstorm just happened.
Which we don't get very often.
So we're both a little wet and under cover now, but actually we were going to continue under the cover of your porch, but it was like rain, like rocks hitting it. So
way too loud.
Yeah, but it's all part of the adventure. So tell everybody what you just took me on a tour of your. Well, you called it a large cutting garden. It's not quite a farm yet, but
yes,
what you're building here.
So I am building all of my beds with large rocks. I am building rock raised beds and then filling them with a mixture of soil and compost. And we'll just keep adding compost and amendments to the soil and making sure everything is healthy. And
so they're about 12 inches high, most of them, or
yeah, I think most of them are around that because there is like a little bit of soil on the ground, but there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And everything that I grew last year did really well. I was really surprised with.
Yeah.
I felt like everything was a success. I mean, obviously there were some things like I was just telling you that my dahlias I grew in really big pots. And I was really just growing them last year to start my dahlia collection because I lost, I don't even know how, like 100 dahlias when
you moved.
When we moved.
Oh.
Because I didn't have a good storage space,
Yeah.
and I pretty much knew that was going to happen. I tried to save them, and then I just gave up and was like, that's not worth it.
Yeah.
And so last year I just started trying to rebuild my collection with some of my favorites. So it was just like one kind each. And so this year I'll be able to divide them and do some propagation and have a bigger dahlia.
So how are you going to outsmart the slugs, do you think?
Well, I'm really hoping that they're not as bad as last year. I mean, they ate down the dahlias every time they would start to grow again. And
see, I would expect that for the ground.
Yeah.
But on a, like, how high were the pots? Like 30 inches or something?
Oh, yeah, at least.
Jeez.
Like, they were big pots. And I would move the pots every day and take all the slugs off of the bottom and around the sides. I mean, the yard was crawling with slugs.
I think you need to... No. Okay, so I've told you need to get a dog to keep the deer away. Now you need to get ducks.
I know. my little one, Ira, would love that. He is such an animal person. And he just loves them.
It's just more stuff for you to take care of, though.
And that is the other thing is now I'm starting to have vole issues in my greenhouse because it's a little bit warmer than anywhere else.
So they found that little spot.
I have ranunculus in bulb crates because last year I had really good success of growing ranunculus and anemones in bulb crates in the greenhouse. And this year the voles have been coming in and just chewing them down. And I have been setting traps and trying some other things. I think I need some cats.
Okay, so now we've created a whole fauna to go with your flora.
Yes.
You don't seem discouraged, though, Lindsay, and I do think it's just your personality. You're just an optimistic, kind of can-do person.
I really try to look on the bright side and just find the good in everything because we live in a very intense time, and if I start focusing too much on all of the really hard things that are happening in so many different ways, it just gets me down, and it just like bums me out. Yeah. So which is really hard to do when you're a mom too.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of extra energy.
No, I can tell. And you're still finishing your homestead. So you and Zach are building more than when you started here.
Oh, yeah. We just keep adding little things on the weekends.
Wow.
Trying to build up. That was something I invested $5,000 into a beautiful little flower studio that he made me at our other place, and then we bought this place, and that studio is still over there. So I had a flower studio for a very short few months, and it was amazing to make bouquets in, and I did a couple weddings in it, did all my wreaths in it, and now I'm back to my 10-foot by 3-foot porch.
Yeah. That's not something that can be transported over here then.
Maybe eventually he'll be able to take it apart and move over parts of it.
Oh, I hope so.
And put it back up.
You clearly have the vision for what you want. I asked you right before we turned the recorder back on if you normally did weddings, and your first response, again, shows your personality, where you said, yes, and they were great learning experiences. Like, instead of complaining, you're focusing on what you learned from that opportunity.
I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, I definitely, the first wedding I did, it's hard for me to look at the pictures because the bridal bouquet just kills me.
You see all the things you would do differently now?
It's like not a full, like, 360
Yeah.
bridal bouquet. There's definitely a back and a front, which, did not get translated well.
Yeah.
And, it was fine. Everything, it was a good experience. But
what? You probably saw it more than the actual couple.
Definitely. I mean, it's all things that I'm like hypercritical of stuff, but now I've learned a lot of just, you rotate everything constantly.
Well, you said you're doing spiral stem bouquets for the CSA, which seems pretty sophisticated. Did you teach yourself or ever, work in a flower shop, or how did you?
I took a class from Katie Davis of Ponderosa Time in maybe 2018, and it was just one of her mini classes that was just a day-long one for bridal bouquets, and that was a really fun experience.
Yeah. And I think that her style was a style that you were drawn to, probably with your aesthetic, with a lot of ingredients.
Yes. It was just the timing of it worked out. It was in Portland, so I was able to drive down and go stay with a friend, and it was a really small, intimate class. I think there was only 5 of us.
That's great.
So it was it was in Can Do Studio in Portland, which is just this beautiful open space with like a tiled floor and big windows, and it was a really special day.
I mean, that's a pretty good investment in yourself, and knowing that every, just that one day course, you're using those skills all the time now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was like I really wanted to take one of her like week-long, intensive, big installation workshops, but I couldn't quite invest that much in myself yet.
Or the travel ones are over the top.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, those are the ones I was drooling over, and then I saw that she was doing one in Portland for a day, and I was like, okay, I can justify that.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I would totally agree. What a good investment in yourself. But I think you have a natural... when you described your grandmother's art, I think you have naturally been a creative person that is informing a lot of what you do.
And then my other grandma, my Oma, on my other side, she was a master gardener.
So your other grandmother was more on the avid gardener, master gardener side, and did you garden with her, or?
As I got older, over the last years of her life, I would go down, and she lived on Bainbridge Island, and so there was a couple of years there where I would try to go down and visit her almost every month, and this was before Ira.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit more time, and she had one of those brains where she could just remember all the Latin names of every plant, and so definitely very inspiring. So I've been around plants my whole life.
Yeah, I think that I believe that flower farming is an art form, and there's just so much, especially in garden design and flower arranging, have so many related interpretations. And sometimes I always, because I come out of horticulture, I say, oh, well, I'm just it's making a little garden in a vase, and
totally.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this arrangement that you made, which has some beautiful early spring flowering plum and some currant and rosemary, and is that mint?
Yeah, I found some mint under an eave that was still alive.
That's so great. And then the hellebores and the daffodils, and you'd normally would see all this in a woodland garden. They would belong in the same, order.
And I've been thinking about that as I've been planting my garden beds, which I've been layering them all with bulbs, and bulbs that grow or bloom at different times. So there's different things that are going to be popping up. And
so bulbs and then perennials and then maybe summer bulbs. Spring and then
spring, I guess, spring flowering, and then I have perennials that kick in, and then maybe some I haven't put in any really summer blooming bulbs yet.
You mentioned you might do alliums though.
Oh yeah, I did put in alliums. I guess I do have alliums.
Yeah. But
I'm just trying to layer all of the beds. I really like looking through books that have English style walled gardens, and looking at how they plant things. I don't know if you're familiar with Tasha Tudor.
Yes.
And I just have looked through her books since I was a child, and so now I've been looking through with a different eye of being okay, let's see, how can I do what certain parts of her garden, like different pages in the book where I'm like, ooh, I like that combination of, like forget-me-nots. She has carpets of forget-me-nots, and I love forget-me-nots.
Well, when you talked about the walled garden, and it kind of relates back to what we were talking about maybe before we turn on the recorder with trying to intentionally plant things closer together to see if you can maybe get them to be more compact or shorter stemmed or whatever. And
Yeah.
sort of it's visually beautiful, but it also has another purpose for a designer.
Well, and it also is good because I am the designer. I'm not selling to a florist, so my stems don't have to be, they don't all have to be a certain height. They don't have to be all perfectly straight. I like stems that have movement to them because I'm the one designing with them.
That's such a good point.
And then,
yeah.
If something doesn't work, then I don't use it. But
right, and you don't need an 18-inch stem because you're never, where at the wholesaler at the,
yeah.
they want to have that variable, like it could be used for many purposes.
Yeah.
And you're thinking specifically about your CSAs. Do you think that your restaurant and business subscriptions will pick back up at all this year? I know it's still kind of iffy with
I'm
COVID.
not sure. I've been wondering. I was thinking about reaching out to them and just being like, hey, I just want to let you know that if you're interested, that knowing ahead of time would be good.
I can put you in my rotation.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
I feel like everything is still so up in the air of what is going to be accessible.
Yeah.
And also I feel like a lot of businesses have been hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
And so, justifying being able to spend money on flowers, I totally understand that that's not always feasible.
Yeah. Unless you find someone you want to do a trade with.
Yeah.
That would be worth it to you.
I'm always open to trades. I traded with a potter last year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She makes really beautiful, I have one of her platters. And she was like, oh, you're doing flowers. And I was like, do you want to do a trade?
Bingo.
Because I will definitely take some of your pottery.
That's wonderful. Well, it's so fun to see you now in starting your third season or second season?
Here
Yeah.
at our place, this will be my second season.
Oh, wow.
And so,
you've done so much then.
Yeah, this is only like the very beginning of my second season here.
Great.
I was trying to count how many, I think this will be actually my 6th growing season, but it's been very interesting moving right when I was really starting to get a hang of it, and I was growing in a big, huge rectangle garden with really rich soil. Mm-hmm. So it was really easy gardening.
Right. Yeah, and I think that you're seeking out all kinds of inspiration, like old Tasha Tudor books and people in landscaping, and so it goes back to your brand goals of being different and definitely of a place. I mean, this bouquet is Lopez Island, and what you're growing is maybe not in people's gardens here, but it obviously culturally it's happy, so people respond. And I love when you said people ask you what things are and have curiosity.
I had someone be like, what are the Nigella pod seed heads? Because they're so fun looking. Yes. And they were so curious.
Yes, I know. It's great. And you can kind of get multiple looks out of that because you can sell them when they're in bloom, but then you save the pods.
I really like growing things that have, a longer window of harvest where you can pick the flower, and then if you have extra and you don't need those flowers, you can wait and then harvest the seed heads and put them in stuff. And
maybe use the foliage too.
Yeah, definitely.
Lindsay, this has been so much fun. Kind of wacky.
I know. And now it's sunny again.
Yes, you guys, you would not believe it. It was honestly like a winter whiteout for a few minutes there. We're both wet and cold. And now the sun is pouring through the branches, and they're all dripping with little, crystals of cold,
little dewdrops.
Melted hail.
I know, the ground was white, and now it's back to being muddy again.
Oh, well.
If you were here a few weeks from now, the first year when we first moved here, actually we hadn't even moved yet, I went and planted 1,000 daffodils, all fancy narcissus that have fragrance and are pretty.
Are they kind of along the edge of the woodland?
They are just kind of tucked along edges of rocks, and I have just been each year adding in a few more, and so eventually it's the only thing the deer won't eat here are daffodils.
Yes, we have to follow you on Instagram so we can see that display of almost like rock garden plantings, right?
Yeah, that's, and I just started a foxglove grove in a spot because that's another thing deer won't eat, but I think those are literally the only 2 plants the deer won't eat here.
So we're going to have a lot of those.
Yes, which I really like foxglove and I really like daffodils.
I do too. That's awesome. Oh, well, before we wrap up, anything else that you want to share that I didn't ask you? Because this has been a crazy conversation, but I think
we've bounced all over the place.
Well, we've brought people into the place and the moment, and they're going to hear all the ambient sounds and, experience what it's like for you to be here on this beautiful sort of secret garden.
I love the book, The Secret Garden.
Of course you do.
I just re-listened to that on book on tape, or I guess it's a audio. On my audio on my phone now. It's no longer a tape. And got re-inspired this winter, just the descriptions of the garden coming alive. I was like, oh yes, okay, spring is coming, and it's so fun getting to walk around, and I just do a garden walk every day and look and see if there's any new buds on anything, and the garden's waking up.
Yeah, we just saw the peonies popping through, and we saw a lot of your bulbs popping up, and it's exciting.
All the sweet peas are sown in the greenhouse right now in pots or in 4-inch pots.
Yeah.
And they'll go into the garden.
Don't let the voles get those.
They are way up on a high bench.
Good.
They are hopefully out of the way.
Vole proof. I love it.
Sweet peas, I use them as my foliage or as my greens.
Yeah.
And I use their flowers too. And last year, because I wasn't doing the farmer's market, I did little bunches of sweet peas as add-ons in my CSAs, and then I also just cut the vines and put them in. I love the movement that they give. That's so great.
And people also are super sentimental about sweet peas, so you can get a lot of bang for your buck with that.
Oh, I just love them. I saved a bunch of seed last year, so that will be fun.
That's great. I would love to come back and visit you in the peak of summer and see.
It would be really fun.
See what a explosion it is. But thank you for inviting me over for having this cozy place at the picnic table with the tea and the flowers.
Well, thank you so much for making this journey here.
Yeah, it was great. This is like the best thing I could ever do on a vacation is to go visit a flower farmer. So the fact that you're part of Slow Flowers makes me so happy, and I appreciate your time.
Well, you have just been such a huge inspiration from the beginning, especially the very first year that I started growing. I would listen to your podcast for like 8 hours a day. I just started at the beginning and just started moving forward.
Thankfully, there's a lot of past episodes.
Yes. And so I just was like so inspired and continually being like, wow, there's so many different outlets for growing flowers and so many different business models.
And now you're going to inspire somebody who's new and starting out and listening to your story, which is,
it still feels like I'm at the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's hard to get a setback by changing property, but at least now this is your property.
Yes. So no, it's definitely felt like a setback, but it's also really like a huge step forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I filled all the beds I made last year with perennials. And so now I have a lot of work in the next month or so. I have a lot of building of beds to do.
Well, I hope that the weather warms up soon and that you crave moisture because you need it in the summer, but, moderation.
I know. We really need to get all of our catchment barrels up to take advantage of the rain.
Yeah. Thanks so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining today's special episode. After we wrapped up the recording, the conversation continued, and Lindsay told me that she's hoping to offer personal flower packages for island elopements this season, as well as continuing to design for intimate wedding ceremonies. It was a lovely chat, and I'm not sure when I'll get to do that again. Either take a ferry boat to an island or visit a flower farmer or florist in person. I'm eagerly awaiting both of these special experiences. Our next sponsor thank you goes to Johnny's Selected Seeds, an employee-owned company that provides our industry the best flower, herb, and vegetable seeds supplied to farms large and small, and even to backyard cutting gardens like mine. Find the full catalog of flower seeds and bulbs at johnnysseeds.com. Our big news of the week is that over at Bloom Imprint, our publishing branch of Slow Flowers, we have just opened up the online shop for pre-orders of Where We Bloom, the first book in our 2021 catalog. You can find more details and the link to order in today's show notes. This book's subtitle says it all: Intimate, Inventive, and Artistic Floral Spaces. You're invited to join me and step inside those places where flowers come to life, as Where We Bloom showcases the beautiful plant and flower-filled settings of 37 Slow Flowers designers, farmer florists, and growers. Each environment reflects the personality and aesthetic style of its owner, offering great ideas to inspire the design, organization, and functionality of your creative studio. Visit their spaces and read about their floral passions. I can't wait to share this beautifully illustrated book with you. The books will ship in April, but you can order your copy now. And a few more announcements before we wrap up. There are only 2 more days to grab your free ticket to attend Florvana's Regeneration and Sustainability Summit, taking place online March 5th through 7th. You'll hear from more than 20 fabulous presenters and presentations, including the course Robin Ovney and I are co-presenting, The Journey from Blog to Book. The link to join us is in our show notes today, and I promise you, we have packed so much into our 40-minute mini course. We're especially excited to unveil our 28-page workbook that accompanies the session. This is a valuable tool to help anyone develop their concept and evaluate whether it's a potential book. The free workbook is only available to Florvana registrants, so check it out. As I said, I have the link in today's show notes. And next week, you're invited to join me for a very special webinar hosted by the American Institute of Floral Designers and Slow Flowers. On Tuesday, March 9th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, I will moderate a presentation in collaboration with 3 of the AIFD regional presidents, including 2 who are Slow Flowers members. The topic is From Farm to Florist, and we'll discuss the benefits and best practices to incorporate locally grown flowers into everyday designs and event work. I'm thrilled to say that 4 Slow Flowers members will join the discussion to share their stories and advice for florists from the farmer's perspective. This event is free and open to the public. You can find the registration link in today's show notes, and I hope to see you there. Our final sponsor thank you goes to Rooted Farmers. Rooted Farmers works exclusively with local growers to put the highest quality specialty cut flowers into floral customers' hands. When you partner with Rooted Farmers, you're investing in your community, and you can expect a commitment to excellence in return. Learn more at rootedfarmers.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. The Slow Flowers podcast has been downloaded more than 696,000 times by listeners like you. Thank you for listening, commenting, and sharing. It means so much. As our movement gains more supporters and more passionate participants who believe in the importance of our domestic cut flower industry, the momentum is contagious. I know you feel it too. I value your support and invite you to show your thanks to support Slow Flowers' ongoing advocacy, education, and outreach activities. You can find the donate button in the column to the right at deborahprinzing.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of the Slow Flowers podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more Slow Flowers on the table, one vase at a time. And if you like what you hear, please consider logging on to iTunes and posting a listener review. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of our guests alone, independent of any podcast sponsor or other person, company, or organization. The Slow Flowers podcast is engineered and edited by Andrew Brenlin. Learn more about his work at soundbodymovement.com.